Welcome to Human Potential at Work, the show where we explore social impact, inclusion, and empowerment of everyone, including persons with disabilities. Get ready to be inspired, hear success stories, and learn tips and principles for bringing out the best in everyone.
Hello, everyone. This is Debra Rue, and this is Human Potential at Work. My guests today are, I actually had the honor to get to interview them on Access Chat. And we're going to make sure that we put a link to that episode too, because we're going to go in sort of a different direction than we did with Access Chat. But I was so impressed. I was so impressed with these two authors and leaders and transformational individuals. And so let me introduce, I have Katey Lockwood and also Vernon Sankey. And I'm going to, just for a second, I'm going to tell you a little bit about them, but I'm going to ask them to expand on their background. Katey is a personal transformation coach. She's also a trustee with Katie Piper Foundation, which is about scars should not limit us. And I recently had James Partridge on the show, who unfortunately passed suddenly, which was so sad. And he was talking about facial disfigurement and how we need to stop making all of our bad characters in our movies people with scars on their face. So Katey, I know you can really identify with that. But Katey also she works with people, and she has two life transforming principles that she goes by. Know thyself and be the change you want to see in the world. So as you could imagine, I'm a humongous fan of her, and she's just totally delightful. So Katey, let me give the floor to you. And do you mind giving us a little background of who you are? And, and then we'll turn it over to Vernon. And then I'd like you two to talk about how you met and wrote this amazing book, The Way, Finding Peace in Turbulent Times. Seems like that's a really good book to have out right now. So Katey, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Debra. Really appreciate having your time to spend talking about such a relevant discussion. So my background is obviously in the coaching. I sort of went through my own personal discovery, and I studied different aspects of psychology and philosophy and spirituality, and hence why I felt so passionate about this knowledge. And which is why obviously we wrote the book, The Way, Finding Peace in Turbulent Times. I just realized that there was a real issue with mental health and stress and anxiety. And we actually wrote the book about a year ago, and it was only a couple of months before COVID happened that the book was actually published. So it's so relevant and very timely with what is actually happening in the world right now. So to understand that we really do need to understand ourselves better, and therefore we understand the world better, and how we can use these points in leadership roles, as well as it's so relevant to everybody. And I think that's what we felt so passionate about, is to really be inclusive of everybody, and how we can understand ourselves and how we can navigate through life using these concepts is such a life-changing experience. I mean, it changed my life to understand this, and therefore I just want to be able to help other people and support them so that they can understand it and use it in their lives. So
yeah. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. So thank you, Katey. And so Vernon, let's talk about you for a second. So Vernon is a leadership coach and an author, obviously. And he has been CEO multiple times, chairman of the board, and he's been chairman of the board for major corporations like Atos, Pearson, Zurich, and others. He also told us right before we came on air that he was and this means something different, Vernon, in the States. So I'm going to have you explain it, and also talk about where you and Katey are joining us in the world. But he's also been a governor of a school for 15 years. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I just am so impressed with your background. You have such an amazing background. And yet he's also doing more than that. He's an author, not only of the book that he co-authored with Katey, The Way, Finding Peace in Turbulent Times, but he also authored Stairway to Happiness and A Shelter in Time of Storm. And it has been translated into multiple languages. So Vernon, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Debra. Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. All the things which are titles don't really mean anything at all, right? So it's only the experience that counts. And I've been very, very fortunate in having fantastic experiences all the way through my career. Everything that's appeared, that's turned up has been an opportunity for learning, for change, for helping other people, and for creating growth. One of the greatest joys of my career has been to see the progress that people working with me have achieved. That has been the great kick. That's been what's really made it fun. And many of my successors have been people that we took out or brought out from very restricted backgrounds, and they became CEOs. So my predecessor, Reckitt, which is a very big international company, it's in the top 10 biggest companies in the UK. We recruited him from India when he was a sales manager in Bangalore. And but the potential was there. And the head of HR, Govind Singh, she was in Delhi. And they became a head of HR for the whole corporation and a CEO for the whole corporation. And those are the things that actually, you know, really give you a kick. So the company's obviously got to do well, but if a company, what is a company except other than an assembly of people? And if those people can work well together, can feel supported, can feel that there's a purpose, can feel that there's something important that's going on, then you have a wonderful life. It doesn't have to be all stress and anxiety. On the contrary, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
I agree.
And I've been very lucky in working with people, I'm currently working with Atos, who are just delightful. I mean, they're just delightful. So for me, it's not work. For me, it's an very enjoyable time of learning and of trying to contribute. And obviously the writing has come because like Katey said, there comes a time when there's a need, you feel a need to give back as much as possible. You feel that you've learned something and you want to share that because the joy that you have in life and the challenges that you see and overcome are wonderful things, right? They're just wonderful things. And so it pains me to see the cruelty and the unhappiness and the anxiety and the stress that exists, because yes, it can be like that, but it doesn't have to be like that. And it isn't that difficult to shift, but you do have to shift your thinking completely.
Right.
And so that's really what's led us to actually write these books.
Right, because people don't know how to shift, and it is so critical.
They don't know what to shift or how.
Right, and that's why I love the work that y'all did together. So where are you do have very different backgrounds, and I love that you came together, because to me this is the future. We've got to come together. The generations have to come together. People with different backgrounds, because as we know, Vernon, I worked in what we call corporate America for many years before I became an entrepreneur, but I remember going over to Europe to speak for the EU years ago, and I was sort of surprised how suspicious they were of corporations, because that was at a time, that was years ago, 2004, when in the United States, we sort of still were, you know, lovingly looking at our corporations, thinking they were going to be the way forward. And we don't look at our corporations with those eyes anymore. So and that's why it was fascinating that you two came together, and that you've had these really prestigious jobs. But I also love you in that you said, but the ones that matter were the people's lives that you changed. So bravo.
Yeah, and quite frankly, what we're doing now is the most important thing I've ever done. And if you want just a quick summary, the way would never have been written without us coming together. I mean, there's no way I could have done that without Katey's inputs. And in fact, the first book really was what brought us together, in that I was writing this first book, and I met Katey through a mutual friend because she's very interested in all of this area, of course. And as I was writing it, the book only had four parts to it initially. It now has 5, right? And I showed her the 4 parts, and she kept saying, well, it's okay, but there's something missing. And I kept saying, well, what is missing? I mean, there's nothing missing. I think it's a brilliant piece of work, you know. No. You haven't got it at all. You haven't got, read this, read that, read the other. And so I thought, oh dear, you know, what could she possibly know? But anyway, I did. And I read it, and I thought, oh my goodness, there is a dimension here that I've completely missed. And as I got more and more into this, and it then connected with all the studies I'd done before on philosophy, I mean, German philosophy and Swedish philosophy, all of a sudden, oh my goodness, it's all coming together in a completely different form. So the last part of the Stairway to Happiness, which is, you know, the emancipation of a person, is actually due entirely to our connection. And so from that, we thought, well, maybe we should take that last chapter and make it into a much bigger book, just on the spirituality. And that's where the way Finding Peace in Turbulent Times has come from. So really, you know, I have a lot to thank Katey, because without that, this whole thing, we wouldn't be talking together, even now.
Right. And where are you and Katey joining from? I'm going to let you tell us, because I butchered the name when you told me earlier. So
I'll let Katey start.
I'm in Buckinghamshire. I'm in Buckinghamshire, which is about 40 minutes outside London, but it's more in the country. Yeah, so it's very quintessentially English where I am. But it's beautiful. It's stunning. It's stunning.
I'm on Zoom all day long, but your background, it is so spectacular. I just love, you know, it's so beautiful. So I just wanted to say that. But so Vernon, where are you joining?
I'm joining from a little village called Littlewick Green. It's actually used as a film set for a sort of detective series called Midsummer Murders. You've probably never seen it. You might be able to see it on one of your public channels. Anyway, it's very close to Windsor. And most people have heard of Windsor Castle. Right. Which is quite close to London, because everything in Europe is quite close to each other, as you probably gathered.
Yes. I love the UK and Europe. I will tell you, I'm very bad about watching British movies. I just love British movies and humor and in murder mysteries. They often don't seem as cruel and vicious as some of the murder mysteries in the US that I can't watch, because I choose not to watch violence. And I know today we were talking about this off air, that today is actually a new moon. It is actually a super new moon that when we're filming this, which is the second new moon in a month, and we're going to have 2 more. So there's just so much happening astrologically in the world, COVID-19. I'm fascinated that you and Katey knew to come together to write this book, and you wrote it at a time before COVID-19. So I really would like to explore a little bit more about how y'all knew to write a book that we were going to need so bad.
We even speak about the fact that we actually had a vision of a pandemic happening. So it's kind of wow. very strange, but I think for us to see that we were recognizing that we were heading this way because of what was happening in the world, we could see that there was something escalating. We could see that the way that humans were evolving, I felt, wasn't to our highest potential, and that our consciousness needed to rise in order to deal with the current conflicts that we were experiencing. And we were seeing this, you know, everywhere in the world. And COVID is almost highlighted the opportunity and the need for us to actually do the work to understand that we need to raise our consciousness and become much more aware of who we are and what we're here for, and to have a higher purpose, which I believe that we all have, is, you know, a purpose to improve ourselves, but also to improve the world and to make a difference and impact the world in some way. And I think that creates an evolved thought process. And, you know, to realize that when we talk in the book, we talk about one of the aspects, or one of the concepts, is cause and effect. And when we're talking about something like a pandemic, and the effect, it's like a pebble, you know, this thing drops, and then the effect, it spreads, and there's not one person that doesn't get affected by something like this. And whether it's affecting people in their personal lives and their jobs or their relationships, because this is adding stress and anxiety to people. And if we don't understand how to deal with that and come from a place of peace and calm and solution finding, then we're just repeating human history is going over and over in the same cycle. So it's so relevant now to look at this from a different perception and say, right, well, how are we going to deal with this to evolve in a much more conscious way that is helpful not only to ourselves but to others. It's, you know, it's so relevant right now, and I think where leadership needs to take a more conscious effort, and we're talking about emotional intelligence, we're talking about the need for empathy and compassion and inclusiveness, and whether it's something that's happening again like Black Matter, it's so apparent that we need to stop this separation and to understand that we are all in this together, and we need to collaborate rather than conflict. We have to collaborate and work together, and therefore, you know, we are consciously creating the world into being right now, and how we then take that aspect is how we are looking to our future. And that in future generations, we want them to live a healthy lifestyle, and we are creating that right now. So I think it's a very important time for us to understand this knowledge and to actually utilize it and to bring it out into as many different dynamics as possible.
Before I turn it over to Vernon, why, because I have my own ideas, but let's hear from you. Why did you think it was important to write this book with Vernon? Why Vernon?
So I met Vernon, I was studying neurolinguistic programming, and Vernon was involved in another personal development company. And obviously, I know that he was very interested. He kept putting things in front of me about cognitive dissonance and asked if I was interested. I was absolutely, I'm passionate about this subject. I've always studied the human mind. And when we were talking, I did realize that there was something kind of a little bit missing. And that's when I really started to try and bring in the spirituality side of it, but the consciousness side of it. And when I met Vernon, I think because of obviously his corporate background, I felt really passionate that I would like him to understand this side of it, because I felt that his role for leadership is so important, and the conscious side of that, how that impacts, you know, corporations is so vast. And I knew that Vernon would get it, and I knew that, you know, and I've seen how it's impacted Vernon as well, and I think it's just, yeah, I think it's incredible, really, and it's so nice when someone understands it and realizes that they're important in this part too.
Yeah, because I think he is critical to this, and I'm sorry to talk about you, Vernon, but I just am so impressed with Vernon. So, okay, Vernon, let us turn it over to you. And
I have got nothing to add. I mean, Katey's done a fantastic job. I've got absolutely nothing to add. That was absolutely wonderful.
I have a feeling let me throw something at you to add, because I know that we were talking about before we got on the air, actually, we finally had to stop talking and get on air. But we were talking about, there's a movie out right now. It's, I don't know where it is out right now, but in the United States, it's trending, at least last night, at #4 on Netflix, and it's called The Social Dilemma. And I encourage every single person to watch this show. I knew that there was a lot broken, as Katey was talking about some of this. I knew, you know, people would say to me, as somebody that owns a social enterprise, they would say, well, I can't believe you're working with those corporations. They're this, oh, and they've done this. And by the way, these things were true. But how do you help people change if you don't step in and say, well, you know what you could do? You could actually take your technology and use it to help, you know, reduce the digital divide or make sure people are included or things like that. But people often would treat me like I was just a Pollyanna and, oh, you're so optimistic. But I just really, truly believe that. So now the social dilemma, the reason why it was so powerful to me is I have a daughter that's 33 years old with Down syndrome, and she always was really easy to get along with and wonderful. And then something changed and she became very difficult and she didn't really want to talk to us anymore. And we've had some major problems. And I was able to tie it directly to when she really went online. She had her own phone. We got her an iPhone. She has an iPad. She has access to all this technology, and she really doesn't want to do anything else but live in that world. And she is in a supported apartment, and it has caused so many problems. And I know all these other problems that social media has caused. And you had mentioned, once again, you're a governor for a school in England. I want you to explain, because governors in the United States are, you know, it's a little different use of the word, but this pointed out the problems. And then we've got COVID-19 and all, oh my gosh, and the fake news. And so I wanted to give that to you.
Right. Well, absolutely. We are living in a very interesting age. And in many respects, COVID-19 has accelerated an understanding of a very large amount of very complex issues. So the interesting thing is, as Katey said, we talk about a pandemic in the book, right, on page 4. And we wrote this, the writing started about 18 months before, right? But there's nothing brilliant about that. There's absolutely nothing brilliant, because it was bound to happen, right? It was absolutely bound to happen. And if that hadn't happened, something else would have happened. So again, in the book, we explain, why is this occurring? And then what is it that we can do about it? So I think it is important just to spend a couple of minutes, if you don't mind. I mean, I'll come right back to the schooling, because we need to understand, why are these things happening? And the fact is that what we're seeing is a pure reflection of our own mind. So everything that's happening in the world today is a reflection of our mind, of our thoughts. So if we have a polluted ocean full of plastic, it's because we like cheap disposable goods, which we can throw away without any sense of responsibility, just to feed our desire, right? And we don't think about the consequences of that. You know, if we have wars, it's because we are frightened of other people without thinking about it, and we see ourselves as different and separate, and consequently the other person is frightening. I must build up weapons, and the risk of a nuclear conflagration is enormous. If we have fires, huge fires in different parts of the world, they are a direct consequence of our greed in wanting to have cooler homes, being able to travel further, no respect for the environment, no respect for nature, destruction of a rainforest. These are our actions, right? They are the direct consequence of us. It's nothing to do with random events somewhere. It is a direct consequence. And we can see the acceleration of this because the world has evolved over a very, very long period of time. It's extremely complex. I think in Buddhism, we call this the doctrine of mutual interdependence. And that interdependence means we are all related to each other. We are all dependent on each other. We are all connected to each other. And we are all part of each other. So as soon as we start saying, no, I'm different, I'm separate, which is incidentally a function of ego, then if I'm separate and different, then I need to have this and I need to have that. And I'm right and you're wrong, right? And so everything's up and down never exists. And we suddenly lose complete understanding of what makes the world happen. And the consequence is exactly what we're living through today. We are living through because we are selfish, and we have forgotten the fact that we're interdependent and interconnected in this beautiful, beautiful, highly balanced, highly complex world. The scientists, or the sages of the past all understood this, and the scientists like Einstein and Max Planck, they all understood this too. I mean, Einstein said, the world that we have created as a result of the thinking we have done thus far creates problems that we cannot resolve with the same level of thinking that existed when we created them. And this is what we're trying to do in the way, is actually to say, yes, we need a different way of thinking. Max Planck said the same thing. So, you know, you've got different models that we've followed. The world has followed different models. None of them have worked. And all we're doing is we're changing the deck chairs on the Titanic here. We have to change the boat. We have to change the boat. Now that's a very big, big ask. However, the first step is actually to look inside ourselves. The solutions are not outside. We keep changing the outside, thinking that by changing something, all right, so I change a law, or I change a method of transport, or I change this, and I change, won't make any difference at all. And all these models, whatever it's called, you can call it capitalism, you can call it communism, you can call it whatever you want, they are all flawed, right? They're all flawed because they're trying to change the outside instead of actually saying, what is it inside me that I need to change? What is it that actually, who am I really? What is this thing called this universe? And once I start understanding that I'm interconnected, that I have responsibilities for other people, not just for myself, that it's a beautiful, beautiful world out there, but just by letting go of things which actually don't matter and focusing on things that do, not only have I got a much happier life, but I take wiser and calmer decisions. And that's the message of the book. Now, if you look and see what's happening with social media, children have not been, haven't understood, but parents haven't understood, and adults haven't understood the impact of what it is that they've created. We've created some monsters here. We've created monsters. In the same way as Einstein realized, as soon as he understood relativity, we're creating a monster with this bomb, which should never be shared. We should actually throw away the formula. Because every time we invent something, it has repercussions. So everything has a repercussion. You can't, nothing ever ends. We seem to think, well, if we do this, then the problem's solved. No, it doesn't. It gives rise to a whole lot of others. And we need to understand that. And we need to go back to a basic understanding of what actually really matters in life. And then everything comes together and you say, whoa, you know. So for example, with children, is it better for them to spend 2 hours on their lap, on their iPad, looking at social media, or is it better for them to go out in the country and have a lovely walk, or play games with their parents, board games, or read a book, or talk about stuff, or have dinner around a table? I mean, these are simple, simple things, but they make all the difference, right? So in the school, I mean, obviously,
we've made our life so busy, and it's always, we've got so many things we got to do that we're just going to give our children, and I'm as guilty as everybody of this, our iPads. But I have a question to ask you and Katey. So as I look at, once again, you know, you can point your vision anywhere you want to go to, but looking at the social dilemma, once again, because I love that title, but there's been this genie that we've let out of the bottle. It's been amazing. It's been beautiful and wonderful what we've been able to do. We can do this, having these conversations. But at the same time, we are actually destroying people's lives. And as we're having this show, there are 5 hurricanes spinning. Five hurricanes spinning. And so it's, we've done a lot of damage, and people need to have hope and know that there's a way forward. But is this the yin and yang? Is this always, yeah, I see Katey's shaking her head, you know, is this the yin and yang of it? And you can't have this great good, because there is great good, but there's also horrible, horrible things, people committing suicide, children. We have children 5 years old committing suicide.
Yeah.
So anyway, don't want to get off. So
well, I mean, we would recommend reading the book, because obviously it is actually very, very simple. The problem is the simplicity belies its complexity. We do have to understand who we really are. And we don't. We think we're something else. And that's ego-driven. And we've created a false sense of self. We have a false sense of who we are. We have a false sense of what our role is. And we believe it's nonsense. We believe it, right? So nirvana, if you like, which is nirvana means blowing out. It means, oh, relief. Oh, why? Because I realized this false sense of self is false. It's an illusion. What we're doing here is an illusion. But truth is much, much simpler. Go back to simplicity. Simplicity, yes. Patience, and compassion. Those are the three things that Lao Tzu says he teaches. Simplicity,
I agree.
Compassion, and patience. If you have those three, you have what's called love. Right? They're absolute. Right. There is no duality. So a lot of our life is based on duality. Love, hate, hot, cold, good, bad, right? But in fact, ultimately, we need to get into oneness, which is one of the chapters in the book, incidentally. And oneness means absolute purity. So love can't go to hate when it's an absolute love, right? Love that can go to hate is not proper love. It's attachment. It's an obsessive attachment. It's not the same thing. And we're obsessively attached to all these things of ours. And we're looking at things instead of the formless. So, you know, if I hold up a glass like this, you know, what's the most important thing about this glass? It's the space inside, which is formless. It's just nothing in there. The most important thing of this room is not the walls and the ceiling. It's the space, and that's formless. But that without the space, nothing exists. And when you look outside and you look at the air, that is space. That is the universe. That is who we are. Now, it sounds a little weird, except that when you understand this, you suddenly realize that the things that people get terribly anxious about don't matter at all. You know, playing games for 8 hours and then going to sleep at 4 o'clock. So some of the children literally are playing games on their phone. These are 8-year-old, 7-year-old children until 4 a.m. And then, of course, they go to school and they fall asleep on the desk.
Right. And they don't want to do it. They want to be in this world. And my daughter is that way. So,
well, and so the way the teachers are dealing with this, I mean, I'm sorry, I'll pass it to Kate. The way the teachers are dealing with this is when they observe this, they take those children out for a run or for a walk, a fast walk.
That's a wonderful idea.
Right.
Good.
So they say, drop everything, we stop the class, we're going out, right? So as to actually break that pattern. They've got to break that pattern. It's quite, I mean, obviously when it's got to that point, it's quite difficult, but it requires time to do it. I mean, obviously it's better not to do it in the first place, but it happens. I mean, that's life, right? That is life. However, you know, teaching people how to deal with it is very important. I'm sorry, I've said enough. I'll pass to Katey.
No, but I keep telling people that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So Katey, tell us, you know, you've done a lot of research on this. So how do we start to solve these gigantic problems that seem unsolvable?
I know. I mean, it's a challenging time because obviously there's been a lot of conditioning as well, and to know the truth is very difficult as well. There's not a lot of transparency going on. There's a lot of propaganda, there's a lot of misinformation. And exactly like what you were saying about social media, it's concerning because social media is a bit of an illusion and it's not reality. And people are then thinking they have this expectation that they have to live by because of what they're seeing in social media. And therefore that's given an expectation that people can't live up to. And this is kind of giving this sort of social norm, which isn't norm at all. And again, that is, again, creating some sort of separation when in reality, no one is different. We're all the same. We're all experiencing the same life journey and we're all going through the same motions and the ups and downs. And that's why obviously in the book, again, we talk about how to navigate that, because when we look at it from the aspect of a peaceful mindset, we aren't reactive, we are proactive. We're looking at things in a way that isn't just about the self. We're looking at it in a way that is kinder, is inclusive to everyone, and in a way it's evolving our way of thinking, because we look at it differently rather than sort of reacting in a way that is conflictual. We look at it in a way that, okay, let's look at the opportunity in this. How can we do better? How can we provide a solution which is going to be great for the environment, but also great for our consumers or great for ourselves? You know, it's not just, we don't look at it from a selfish point of view, which I think has been happening for quite a long time, and it's been quite governed by greed or selfish desires. And I think when we look at it from the aspect of actually now we need to look at it from the impact from an environmental aspect, but also from the impact of how we can help others and support others, and include others, respect not only ourselves, respect each other and the earth. And it changes that in itself changes consciousness. And if we can head in that direction, then there's opportunity there to really change and adapt to a much healthier, a wealthier, better world for everybody, rather than what we're seeing at the moment in the aspect of social media is quite concerning. It's concerning for mental health, it's concerning for the environment, it's not taken us down a route which is a positive route, and we have to take responsibility for that. We have to see a solution and take a responsibility, not only for ourselves but corporates, leadership. You know, that no one is subject to it. Everyone needs to understand it.
And so, Katey and Vernon, either one of you can answer this, but who did y'all write the book for? Because I know the book can be used certainly for each human being, but our corporations are playing such critical roles and making some bad decisions in the world. And of course, our corporations, even though we've given them, you know, human status in the United States, which I still think is ridiculous, but corporations are made up of humans. So maybe
can I perhaps start? Can I just start to answer that? We wrote the book for individuals because in the end, everybody has to do the work. They have to do their own homework, right? They have to do their homework. And if you go through the guidance of the book, it will take you through all the different aspects that will help to create an environment for yourself where what you're going to do is you're going to observe. You're going to find a time and a quiet time to observe what is happening in your mind. Observe these thoughts. Observe the role of ego. Observe how you're reacting. That's called self-awareness. Right? The awareness of this ego, awareness of what's happening, separating yourself from that initially, so that you start to understand, oh my goodness, my reactions are for this reasons or that reasons. And you need to spend some time on the observance. So meditation is really important. And incidentally, the way our book, The Way Finding Peace, is coming out in audio form very shortly. In fact, it's available now. And it has a couple of guided meditations that to music, which Katey is narrating. And we found a very nice musician. corporates can use this, and we're developing programs which will help to put this into corporates. But in the end, it's an individual thing. However, at the corporate level, you know, the way in which office work takes place, the way in which homework takes place, is just done in a very, very linear fashion. And the more creative companies have realized the importance of the wellness programs that they can put in place, but also we need to create space for people. So all offices should have an area, ideally completely enclosed area, where they can indulge in meditation, reflection, listen to music, have fragrances there, and have some peaceful time so as to recharge the battery. But more importantly, take stock. I do not need to be rushing about like I do. And we rush about all over the place, chasing after something, which is ridiculous, right? And when we actually say, well, this is ridiculous. Why am I doing that? I don't need to do that now. I don't need to do it like this. I don't need to send an email to 50 people. I don't need, you know, oh, let go. Just let go. What's really important? And when you start to do that, you find actually, I've created a whole lot of time. And not only have I created time for myself, but I've stopped taking up terribly important time of other people. Because what happens in an office is I've got to cover my back. Why have I got to cover my back? Because I'm terrified of what somebody else might, whoa, 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 whoa. Something's wrong here, right? The atmosphere's wrong, the environment's wrong. Leadership has to take the stand, has to show example, has to behave correctly. In other words, what we put out as guidance is how we should live our own lives. And we should show that and demonstrate that every day and insist that that happens. Not insist in a negative way, but insist because that's a nicer way to be. It's a nicer way to work. It's the correct way to work. It has integrity. Good heavens, you know, what a funny word, integrity. It has integrity. We're speaking the truth, not telling a whole pack of lies. We're telling it as it is, right? And people much prefer to follow somebody who has conviction, who has enthusiasm, who is honest, and will tell it even when it's bad news, than somebody who keeps changing their mind, who tells a pack of lies, who's clearly there for themselves, not for other people. And the difference is like chalk and cheese. But I'm afraid we've still got too many of the second and not enough of the first. And we can help people to get over that.
Yes.
And we can help people how to do that. That's part of leadership. But more importantly, at the start, is we can help people with anxiety and show that that anxiety is purely a thought. It doesn't exist. It's not real. It's an illusion.
I struggle with that one. And this morning I was feeling anxious because I actually got in an argument with my beautiful daughter about social media last night. And she's like, how could you? And she hangs up on me. And it's just funny, the anxious, but there's a lot of energy. You can feel so much energy. I want to ask Vernon, you and Katey, if we could maybe go over just a few more minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no problem.
I'm fine. Yeah, I mean,
Right,
Katey needs to contribute to this last piece. Yeah, I'm fine for extra if you want.
Well,
I mean, we've got so much we could talk about. We've got so much we could talk about.
And what I'm hoping is that y'all will come back on the show, and maybe maybe Doug could also join us, because he does a lot of this teaching. He's done courses for the Daily Om, which I think is so cool. Right. So
wonderful.
I think these are such important conversations. And I love what you said, that you and Katey are creating programs for corporations. And Katey, I don't know if you want to explore that a little bit more, but I'm seeing something. I'm going to say this, and maybe you might want to, we'll let you respond, Katey, but Vernon, you might be interested in responding after Katey. But one thing that I'm seeing, we work with large global corporations at Real Global Impact, and we support them with social good, inclusion of people with disabilities, tech for all, things like that. Since the pandemic, we've had so many more come to us and say, okay, now I hear you. I know you wrote inclusion branding, but now we see what you're saying. We work for these gigantic corporations, but we don't want this to happen on our watch. We want to do better. So I'm seeing a lot of corporate people working for big corporations really understanding that they have a really important role in playing this, not only for ourselves, but for everyone else, and certainly for future generations. And so I'm very curious about what you're doing. Not only, the way is for all of us. So let's all go out and buy the book, do reviews. They need reviews. That's how the book gets noticed, and people need this book. It's really powerful. But I was hoping Katey and Vernon, you might talk a little bit more about how you're going to bring this into corporations, because there are a lot of, you know, people working at large corporations that follow the show. But I think that is the most exciting thing, because I believe that's where that change can have the biggest impact.
Okay.
So Katey, we'll start with you and then get
yeah.
to Vernon.
Okay.
Yeah, the reason, obviously Vernon can speak a bit more about that, but the need for emotional intelligence is, to me, is very, very apparent. And I think to show that there is a need in the diversity of corporations to be inclusive of all, you know, whatever that role is. And I think it's so transparent to that desire for corporations. And I think even when we talk about corporate responsibility for their well-being of their employees, that they are considered and they are thought of as people, and not just, you know, work, to be in the workplace, and to know that they have a responsibility for them in their own personal lives, and also to provide a health and well-being aspect for the business. So yeah, Vernon, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Well, I mean, we do some personal coaching with senior executives, but also actually with sports people, and it's the same, right? The pressures on a sports person are huge, absolutely huge. And it's exactly the same sort of pressure, the pressure itself. The circumstance is different, but the pressure is very, very similar. So we have a series of videos, and we're going to develop those further. We can do different things. The first thing is to explain to people what's actually happening in their mind. And there, I think Douglas would probably be quite interested, which is what is happening and why it's happening, taking more of an Eastern rather than a Western approach. Because, and I'm sure Douglas will say more of this, but psychotherapy is trying to get you back to a norm. Effectively, it's trying to bring you back to a norm of society. So it's correcting something, often by dealing with guilt and all those things which are associated with Freudian psychology and Jungian psychology, which is fine, except it's quite difficult to do. Eastern philosophy actually is saying, really, if you understand who you are and that you are part of this perfect universe, you have actually clouded yourself and surrounded yourself and enveloped yourself with these ego conditioning. If you can just remove some of those, the light will come in. And so it's a gentler, kinder, more compassionate way of looking at life, right? Both ways actually end up in the same place, because what you're trying to do is to help an individual be comfortable with who they are. One is saying, be comfortable with who I am as a member of society. The other is be comfortable who I am as a member of the universe, right? You end up with the same, but so we can use both. But in a way, by helping corporates to understand who they really are, and that the corporate is a living being. The corporate is an assembly of people who are a living being. They're a living organism. And actually, that is what the universe is. It's a living organism. It's a giant organism where everything is connected. Everything is related to each other. And we're not separate. So yes, we have a separate personality, but we cannot exist separately. It's a terrible mistake to think that I can do something on my own and it doesn't matter what anything else happens. I can't. It's a complete illusion. And so one of the big anxieties of our time is we ask ourselves and we ask other people, to do the impossible. We ask them to draw a square circle. We ask them to put all the furniture that they've got, we want them, put them all up. Make sure we're all up, don't have it down. It's not possible. And yet that's what we're doing. We're constantly trying to do things which can't be done. Right? And therefore that creates anxiety, frustration, you know, all the mental issues are people seeking and grasping at things that don't exist and can't be done. And so first of all, help people understand what is this process that's happening? And then how do I actually get rid of these pieces of conditioning? How do I observe my ego to start to deal with my ego? In the end, it is part of who I am, right? So ultimately, ego's me. However, right. I don't have to, so it is part of me. I'm never going to get rid of it. But if I can understand it, face it, understand how it works, how it operates, and laugh at it. So laugh at it and say, well, you know, I am not going to say that. I know it makes me feel, it may make me feel better. I may get a cheap shot, but come on, I'm not going to do that, right? That is awareness, and awareness leads to an awakening. And so once you have the awakening, then everything, I mean, Dr. Satori, who's a very good writer on Zen philosophy, it was asked, he said, what's it feel like when you've when you're finding this awakening? What's it feel like? He said, well, it's everything's exactly the same as it normally is. The only thing is, I'm actually walking about 3 inches off the ground. And if you get that, in other words, the world's not going to shift. Yeah. But what's happening is I've shifted. And as a result of that shift, I can help other people have the same enjoyment of life, which I almost feel slightly guilty about sometimes. You know, so how can you feel happy and having this enjoyment of life when there's all these things happening? And the answer is because I'm going to try and do something about them. But right. I can't do them from a position. I can't do them from a position of misery. I can only do them from a position of hope and positive approach. So we can instill that in a corporation by explaining. And then of course there's a lot of meditation that's required. You do have to do your work. As Katey will be the first to say, you've got to do the homework. If you don't do the homework, you're not going to get anywhere. I'm sorry, Katey.
People are confused about meditation, though. People are confused. It's like, I have ADHD, and I meditate, but not in the as much. I do the walking meditations. I meditate before I go to sleep. I meditate. I feel like I do a walking meditation prayer all day long, but I struggle to go and sit in the right space for 20 minutes with my eyes. I'm just too hyper for that. So, but I know that the book, and Katey, we definitely want you to address this. I know that the book gives us some specific goals, because I think that what's happening is everything you're saying, and I agree with everything you're saying, and I live my life that way, but I think people are really confused about how to even begin this, which is why I think the book is really important, and the follow-up courses and the coaching and stuff you're doing. But and I also know we're over time, but Katey, I want to give you time to talk about that, and then I want you to, both of you, to tell the audience how they can find, where they can get the book, where they can follow you on social media and your website, and if they want to contact you to come in and do training for them and help them out, how they can do that. So Katey, let me turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, I'd always say to lead with love. If we lead with compassion and love, and we understand that, that we are connected. And there was actually an experiment done by Dr. Emoto, who was talking about how water is affected by our words. So, and we are, I think, a high percentage of water. So to realize how our words really, matter to other people. So just to be self-aware of that, because, to lead with love is to understand that the person you're talking to is the same essentially as I am. So treat others as you expect to be treated yourself. The the book has the meditation practices, but it also talks about the concepts that we spoke about, which is very much to do with science and spirituality, a really nice interweaving of both. As I said, it's completely transformed and changed my life, and which is why I feel so passionate about helping other people to see that work and how it can impact their lives. And even if it's just to create a healthy environment with the relationships within their family life, I know that consciousness will ripple out to other people. And if we can impact the workplace, again, that consciousness impacts other people. And therefore we create a collective consciousness altogether. So the programs, they are available on the website, which is improvemyworld.com. The social media, again, is under Improve My World on Instagram. There is the meditations that we are just doing and we've just recorded at the moment, which are should be available in the next couple of months. But one or two of them are available with the audio of the book. So I don't know if there's anything, Vernon, you wanted to add.
Can I ask you a quick question before you go to Vernon? And I want to give Vernon the last words, but I want to ask you a hard question, I think. I totally agree with what you said about your words matter. And little things matter, like smiling at people and getting off your phone when you're in line and acknowledging you were dealing with a human being. But Katey, and I think of my daughter, Sarah, with Down syndrome about this. Sarah reads your energy. I think we all, by the way, we read the energy, and you can be saying the right words, but she can tell if you're genuine with that or not. Some of us are better. I'm pretty good at that too. But I was just wondering for a moment if you would talk about that, because words matter, but also the energy behind your words, if they're empty or you're angry and you're smiling. We all know. I was just wondering if you would just address that for a moment, then we'll give the microphone over to Vernon.
Yeah, I mean, we're all energy. So, I mean, you can understand, so if somebody walks into the room and you can feel their vibration, we talk about vibration as an energy. So you can feel that vibration as somebody's had a bad day, or they're in conflict with themselves, you feel that. And so when it comes from a place of a heart centered, it's coming from love. It comes from a place of peace, of authenticity, of integrity. And that it's felt. It's an emotion that you feel. You feel connected to that. And that's something really powerful, because when people feel connected to that, it's light, it's love, it's peace. And it comes from a place of when somebody's really happy within themselves. They don't need anything else. They're just happy and content and at peace with themselves. And therefore, the language that person is using is coming from that place of peace. I feel very strong with the power of words. Words are energy. So to know that we are impacting people's lives by the words that we're using. And that's why social media can have its faults, because there's lots of trolling and lots of negativity going on, and that's really worrying, because that impacts that person, and therefore they're creating their own energy from that. So I think we've got to be so self-aware of this, because we cannot carry on with that sort of negativity. But when it comes from a place of leading with love, with empathy, with realizing that we have to work with compassion, then it comes from a space that is of peace. And we realize that impact of our words really, again, creates that pebble effect of consciousness.
What a beautiful, Vernon, y'all need to make that into a video, which she just said. That was amazing.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Katey's absolutely brilliant. And I mean, I think if we talk about words, you see, words are symbols. In other words, you don't get water from the word water. Water's just a symbol, right? It creates something, and it's actually quite inadequate. So the words are very poor, really. I mean, we have a system of words which are symbols, but they're extremely difficult to explain with words. So the scientists have realized that, because how do you explain how quantum physics works in words. You can't, you see. So the only way you can do that is you go to mathematical equations, which is a language, right? And Einstein realized that words couldn't explain what the extraordinary things that he was discovering. They're just too extraordinary for words. You can't explain them in words. So you have the very complicated mathematical equations, which other physicists can understand up to a point. And then he realized, but I actually haven't even scratched the surface. I haven't even scratched the surface. Right? And that's where his spirituality is. So Einstein is revered as a top scientist, but he was quite irritated when people said that. He said, all the things I've learned are because of my spirituality, not my scientific ability. And if you read his work, and if you read what Max Planck said, they say the same thing, right? In other words, it's not science that's taken over from spirituality, it's science that's realized the importance of spirituality and the scale of it. And his eyes were open to that. So there's a little quote, if you'd permit me, and then I'll just come back and tell you a little story about feelings. But Einstein said the scientist's spiritual feeling takes the form of a rapturous amazement at the harmony of natural law, which reveals an intelligence of such superiority that compared to it, all the systematic thinking and acting of a human being is an utterly irrelevant reflection. This feeling is the guiding force behind his work, insofar as he succeeds in freeing himself from the shackles of selfish desire. It is without question akin to that which possessed the sages of all time. And that's what we're talking about. Now, just a little story with my two of my grandchildren. We're walking in the woods with them, playing around, and my grandson, who's 10, and my granddaughter, who's 8, and the grandson picks up a stick, starts hitting it around, and his name's Tommy, and then his sister, Emma, is looking at the stick, and and say, well, I wouldn't mind a stick like that. And I'm behind Tommy, and I say to Tommy, Tommy, why don't you give your stick to Emma? No way, no way, no way. I said, Tommy, well, it's not really your stick. You can't take it with you anywhere anyway. You picked it up. In fact, we found it together. It's not really your stick. You just happen to have the current use of it. Why don't you just try it, see what happens? And the connection with my granddaughter, just looking, the eye connection, she's more mature for an 8-year-old than he is at 10. But she realized what was going on. She realized it completely. Tommy then very reluctantly gives the stick to Emma. And Emma says, thank you so much, Tommy. That's it, that's lovely. Here, have it back. No words were required, right? Not a single word. She understood exactly what was happening without a single word being spoken. The only word was, Tommy, how about giving that to your sister? That's all. Everything else was about feeling, was about connection, and her understanding was remarkable. I mean, amazing, amazing. She had the subtlety of realizing what was happening. That's what it's about. That's so much more important than anything else. And that's the love that Katey's talking about. That is a connection through love. And there's nothing that can't be achieved. You see, when that happens, when you're no longer frightened of anything, there's nothing that you can't achieve. Because I'm not worried about anything. So why would I be worried? If I'm not worried about anything, why can't I achieve something? If I'm not frightened, I'll have a go.
Yeah,
and I think that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to get to with the book. So I mean, the book is available on Amazon. It's all the books are available there, and hopefully the audio is available on various sites. It should be on Audible within a few weeks, and I think you'll hopefully, and if you're interested, we're very happy to share some of the meditations, because the meditations are short. They're about 10-12 minutes, but they have a message in them. And they are all messages linked to what we've been talking about, to try and help people
Right.
understand this.
And I think it's really important that my audience knows that this dream team is available and that they can help. I mean, right away, they'll help with the book. Let's all go buy the book. Let's read the book. Once again, do reviews. It's so important, you know, in this digital world. But, and also that they are available to speak, to come into a corporation and help you figure it out. Because right now, corporations need this. They've always needed it, but there's never been a time when they need it more than this. So, so as we're going to provide all the links so that you can get to them, and but it's improvemyworld.com, and we'll provide
and then
links.
if they want an email, you can always give them my email. I mean, for courses, you see, what we would want to do is to understand exactly what they need. So it's, we're not going to give a thing and say, this is how it is, because that's not realistic. What is it you really need? And then we will adapt and tailor it so that it reflects what you need. And it may not be what you think you need is not actually necessarily what the truth. You may need something different. Right. But within it's all there. Sorry?
I just think corporations really need a way forward right now. So,
yes.
But we all do. So the book, The Way, is for all of us, but we'll make sure all of the links to that, to their website, so you can find out how to contact them. I'm not going to let Vernon give an email because a lot of people watch this show, and we'll just make sure that we provide it so that everybody has it, but so that poor Vernon doesn't get spammed by a billion emails. So,
well, I mean, you have to have some mechanism. I think there is another email associated with the website.
Okay.
Which is Vernon Sankey at improvemyworld.com.
Okay, good. All right.
And that is just for that.
Yeah, right.
That is just for that.
Well, thank you both for being on the show. I know that we went longer than normal, but I just can't think of a more powerful conversation, and I know it helped me. So I really, really appreciate Katey, Lockwood, and Vernon Sankey and the work they're doing. It's very, very important in this new world, and it's going to help us all be healthier and happier, and it's going to protect our planet. So I appreciate Vernon and Katey. Thank you for being on the show today, and thank you to the audience. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.